I'm Eileen Isola. I want to tell you about the incredible all-volunteer writers who are setting forth on a mission that will release ripples of inspiration, empowerment, legacy, and healing into our world. You know, history demands listening to unheard voices and recognizing unheralded figures. So we, USAFA women writers, have set forth on a mission to find and amplify those voices. We are writing a book to tell the story of the 50 years of the women of the U.S. Air Force Academy. This is not a book about being a cadet at the Academy, nor is it a book just for women alum only. It is a universal tale of inspiration, achievement, resilience, empowerment, and healing for readers everywhere. You know, Academy women changed our society, changed our culture. We changed the lives of and for women everywhere and their opportunities to live the lives that they want. We changed the way decision makers think, and we changed the way decisions get made everywhere at all levels. We changed the way our nation secures and defends itself and, when necessary, how it conducts operations, fights wars, and keeps the peace. We changed the very force structure of the entire Department of Defense, so much so that the uniformed services of this country would pretty much cease to function to defend this nation without us. We Academy women have a voice that has gone unheard and a story that has gone untold. And USAFA women writers are changing that. The journey to write, publish, and tell our story, and our mission to inspire, empower, preserve our legacy, forge a collective community, and to heal has begun. But we can't do this alone. We need your help. Whether you are a grad or not, if you walked up that ramp and you experienced the Academy as a woman, you have stories from the Academy and from the entirety of your life. And we invite you and encourage you to share them with us, USAFA women writers. Become a contributor to the book. For everyone, we ask for your help to fund this project and our broader mission. Writing and professionally publishing a book is not a trivial venture. And while we, USAFA women writers, are all volunteers, there are many, many costs to doing so. It will take us 2 years of committed hard work and expenses to achieve the publishing of this book, of our story, which will be released in 2026 in conjunction with the year-long celebration commemorating our 50 years. So go to our website that you see here, learn about who we are and the mission we are on. Find out about submitting your story, becoming a contributor. Donate, please, to support our mission and the publishing of this book. Watch the full video at the link in the first comment below, and join us on our 2-year journey into history. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I was going to start with good afternoon since I'm on the East Coast of the U.S., but I know for some of you it may be morning, for some it's evening, so I'm just going to say good day. We wanted to let you know our chat is open, so feel free to take a moment and put where you're joining us from. And welcome, everyone, to the virtual launch of Necessary Turbulence. I'm Jennifer Ortiz, one of the editors of this incredible book, and I'm excited to be here with you. Of course, this celebration had to be virtual because, as you may know, we're spread far and wide around the world. So almost everything this group of women does is virtual. But we want to thank you so much for taking your time to be with us here today, which is a special day because it was 50 years ago on this very day that the USAFA Sisterhood began, with 157 women marching up the Bring Me Men ramp. So on June 28, 1976, the class of 1980 in process and history was made. It's remarkable to think that 4 days ago, on 24 June, the class of 2030 started their basic training. When you add numbers, it makes it real. The class of 1980 started with only 10% of the cadet wing being women. Today, that number has increased to approximately 30%. So that long blue line slowly grows stronger and longer as we've recently calculated that there are over 8,000 women who have graduated from USAFA. Our sisterhood unceasingly expands. Today, we want to celebrate that history together and the future it continues to bring. Necessary Turbulence was born out of that understanding that we needed to capture the history that USAFA women had lived in those 50 years and not just at the academy. What we recognized early is that women who had walked up the ramp on in-processing day had lived some incredible lives, and most of them hadn't ever shared their stories. And we wanted to change that. So today you're going to hear the story of how Necessary Turbulence came to be, as well as hearing stories from that now recorded history. This record would not have happened if it wasn't for our editors, a group of women we've lovingly named the USAFA Women Writers. If our editors could do, I don't know if we can see them or not, but if you can do a hand raise or a hand wave. We have with us today Don Androsky, Michelle Rule, Maxie Jane Frazier, Eileen Isola, Christine Traxler, and Catherine Torres. So unfortunately, Kimberly Pratt was unable to join us today, and Andrea Trudeau is actually deployed, but we are holding both of them in spirits and in our thoughts. This record also would not have been possible without the bravery of our 108 contributors who trusted us with their stories. If you're a contributor, I don't know, we probably might not be able to see you on the webinar version of this, but wave anyway. The courage our contributors displayed as they responded to the call for submissions cannot be quantified. The writing team was in awe of the submissions that we received, and we want to be sure that our contributors feel our sincere thanks today for giving us that trust. Finally, we want to thank our family and friends and members who were by our side. Our is both the writing team and the contributor, because the process of getting this book to publication was not easy, and it's the support of our friends and family that got us here. So today we're going to hear a conversation with the writing team, and you're going to also have an opportunity to ask us any questions you may have. I think we already have a few in the chat that we'll be answering. Once again, welcome to all our guests. We're excited to celebrate Necessary Turbulence with you, and I'm going to turn it over to Eileen, who's going to give you the story behind the story.
Hey everyone, Eileen Isola, class of 1985, and we don't know why the chat is not working. We are scrambling to try and get it to turn on, so if you'll just hang with us, we're working on that. All the settings say it should be working. But I did want to take a few minutes. We do get questions, and people wonder, like, how did this even happen? And most books begin with an author asking themselves, and in our case, we have a team of 9 that are the writing team. And most of the time it begins with, what story do I want to tell? In our case, we began with a very different question. Why has this story never been told? And why did this book have to exist? And we kind of started from there. Because for 50 years, thousands of women have entered the U.S. Air Force Academy, as we know. We're over 12,000. And for those of us who are alum, we know that we became partners and wives, mothers and grandmothers, pilots, engineers, physicians, astronauts, commanders, lawyers, entrepreneurs, teachers, musicians, public servants, mentors, and leaders in every corner of American life. This extraordinary group of women have lived and they've died, and yet there was no single place where their collective experience had ever existed. Not because the story wasn't important, and not because remarkable things hadn't happened and they hadn't done remarkable things, but simply because
no one had ever asked and no one had ever gathered the voices together. And that realization became the source for the vision that underpinned this project. And you saw that video clip at the beginning if you were here for the first few minutes. The words "we should write a book" were first spoken into the universe on March 23rd, 2023. And on June 23rd, which happens to be the date that our book was released, but on June 23rd, 2023, a book committee was formally formed. That was what it was called back then, the book committee. By the fall of 2023, we have found our way to Maureen Murdoch's Heroine's Journey. And if you're not familiar with that, I encourage you to go find it and read it. It's an incredible book. And it became our coalescing inspiration. What could more perfectly describe the life journeys of Air Force Academy women? And then the vision, the big, hairy, audacious vision came, that we would write a story that had Air Force Academy women as its protagonists, who all came from a single shared origin, a shared crucible, but that this would absolutely not be a book about the academy or about what it's like to be a cadet, that this was to be the story of our heroine's journey. And with that, we were able to define the book's foundation, who we were writing for, why, and what was the promise we were making to our readers everywhere of all kinds. The call for submissions went out in the summer of 2024, and we had no idea what we would get back. We had no outline for the book yet, only the heroine's journey, that story arc, and what we wanted the book's centralizing themes to consist of. We knew we had to wait and see what would come back to us, what would be submitted. And oh, those submissions came in. 163 of them from all 5 decades, totaling 560,380 words, including 50 hours of oral interviews. And then something unexpected happened. It became clear that we had a depth and breadth of stories and personal truths that we could not have possibly foreseen. It became clear that the only way to tell the full and honest story of these women was to tell it collectively. And with that, while not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, we went back to our original vision and began crafting a collective single story. A single story told with and through the 108 voices, but told, again, in just a single voice. A story written in a literary style known as the collective we. As you know, again, 108 women chose to trust us with their experiences. And today we celebrate the creation of that story and the publication of the book. But more importantly, we celebrate something larger. We celebrate these 108 women who chose to preserve a story that future generations can now discover, learn from, and carry forward. And I'd like to invite 2 really important people who were pivotal in the creation of this book and who helped bring this project into the world, and ask them to share why they believe this story mattered from their own unique perspectives. First is the woman who wrote the foreword to the book, Professor Dr. Kate Landeck, historian, published author, documentarian, and acclaimed expert on the women Air Force service pilots of World War II. Kate?
Thanks so much, Eileen. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Good. Well, first, I want to say thanks for inviting me to have a chance to say a few words. And second, and most importantly, I want to say congratulations. Congratulations to the writing team. Congratulations to those who shared their stories. Congratulations to the publisher. I think you've got a winner here. But I think my journey to being a part of this, I'm so proud to have my name associated with this in any way. You all have done incredible work. When Eileen first talked to me about this, we had a long, I think, hour-and-a-half long conversation. She was telling me all about it. And I was very encouraging, I think, but I thought she was crazy. And I told her so because I'm an honest person. And I said, it was too much. You're going to gather all these stories and put them in one. And how are you going to organize it? And how are you going to make it make sense? But we kept having calls and she'd talk to me and I'd say, good, keep doing it. That's great. Because I think the gathering of those stories is so important. You have unique experiences, even though you have this common thread. And it's just incredibly important to gather those stories. And then she sent me the copy of the book, and I called her and I said, I couldn't believe it. You guys had done it. I don't know how you did it, but you wove those stories together in a way that you can see those common links to the experiences of all these women in such a beautiful way. The themes are there. You all have provided not only a time capsule of the experiences of the women who went through the first 50 years and those themes that connected over those 50 years and those stories of those individuals, but you have provided a model that didn't exist before of how you can do this, how the other women's academies women can do this, how other groups can do this. You've done incredible work. I hope you will write down the committee that did this. I hope you will write down how you did it and how you got there. I can't imagine the time and the love that you put into this. I just am so impressed by it. It's such an important book in telling the story of women who walked up that ramp, but also of women of the 20th century and 21st. So congratulations. Thank you for letting me be a part of it. I think you have demonstrated that you are a part of the legacy of women who've served in the military in the United States and in the world, but you know, from the beginning. And you have shown that women who serve in the military and women who walked up that ramp, they're not alone. And I can't imagine the encouragement that you're going to give to women who struggle through hard days and wonder if they can do it. You've shown them that they can. So congratulations, and thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Thanks, Kate, very, very much for everything, for over all these years, and for your own, what you have contributed to the canon of American history. And someone else who has also contributed greatly to that canon of American history and women's stories is our publisher and the president of the Millspeak Foundation, Tracy Crow, without whom none of this would have happened and been possible. She said yes to us before we had ever put a single word on paper. And she now has the floor to share some of her perspective. Thanks, Tracy.
I seem to be, okay. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Yes. Oh, you can? Okay. I can't see me, so I didn't know. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Tracy Crow, and in a way, I kind of feel like an interloper here because I think I'm pretty sure I'm the only Marine Corps veteran among this crowd, maybe. So I feel like a little bit of an interloper. But let me say, first of all, congratulations. I mean, this is such a monumental achievement. And it has been such an honor and a thrill for me to see it from the very beginning, from the idea, from the pitch that I got several years ago to do this. And it always makes me kind of quietly chuckle when Eileen says to people that I said yes before I even saw the first word. So let me tell you the 3 reasons why I said yes before I saw the first word. First of all, a few years before she came to me, I had just released a book with a co-author who was a Navy Lieutenant Commander, Jerry Bell. Some of you may know Jerry. Jerry had talked me into working on this historical biography with her, in which we would write the overall historical context of women's stories in uniform since the American Revolutionary War. And she really talked me into it. We covered it all. But the way she got me into it was she said, I know you're a former journalist, Tracy, and I know how you feel about women telling their own stories in their own voices and without the filtering of a journalist or someone else. She said, so the idea is that we write historical context for each era of war, but we let those women tell their stories from congressional depositions, their private diaries, their journals. But here was the real kicker. She let me know that there was a back room at the Women's Memorial in Arlington that was filled with unpublished memoirs. And when I went there and saw the stacks of unpublished memoirs, I just wanted to cry because nobody ever knew these stories were there. And so when this idea was pitched to me, how could I say no? Right? I mean, how could I say no? I mean, these stories really, really matter. And for me as a publisher to have an opportunity to provide a safe pathway into the world. So, you know, it was an easy yes for me. It was an easy yes. So the first reason was because I had already put together a book. I knew what that was like. The second way, these were the kinds of stories that deserved a pathway into the world. And part of that reason too is that had I not already had a relationship of 4 or 5 books with my previous publisher, I'm not sure that Jerry and I would have found a home for our book. But I had a relationship with that publisher because collections just are not something that typically a publisher will grab up. They'll lump them in with anthologies. They feel like the market's too narrow. And as a literary agent as well, I had had an impossible task of trying to sell another client's manuscript of World War I literature that was absolutely gorgeous. And I finally convinced her just to let Mill Speak Foundation publish it because we couldn't find a home for it. So I did not want to see this group of women, hard, dedicated women, go out there and beat their heads against, you know, the gatekeepers. And so if I could provide that avenue for them, it was just an honor for me. And then the third reason was because of Maxie Jane Frazier. If any of you know Maxie, you probably know. I mean, I have watched Max for years nurture and work with emerging writers. I've seen how dedicated and loving she is with all of her support with everybody. I know what she has going for her as an editor. I've read her entire unpublished yet memoir, so I knew she was capable of finishing a book because I had read it. So I knew she could finish a book. So when she came and said, you know, here's an idea, you know, what do you think? And then introduced me to Eileen, Jen, and Dawn. I mean, talk about a force of nature. I mean, I was blown over. So those are the 3 reasons why we had to say yes. But I had to make very clear to them too that MillSpeak is a very, very tiny foundation. I mean, all we do is publish books that are written by military veterans and military family members. And only can we do that when we have donations. So everything that comes in for a book sale goes actually to the publication of the next book by the next qualified veteran. And so I told her, we don't have like these big funds to do the big book tours and the whirlwind and the publicity and we just don't have that funding. We can provide the pathway, we can do all the work, we can do all the design, we can do all that. But if you wanted to go larger, then you were going to have to find another way to go even beyond what MillSpeak Foundation was going to be able to offer. And they were like, piece of cake. Let us have it. So anyway, it's been truly a great honor to work with this group of women and then to read what the whole thing as it came together and to help them design the interior. And it's just been a thrill. And everybody in the MillSpeak Foundation family is so honored to just play a role in this and be on this journey with you. So thank you so much for letting us go along on the journey with you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Kate and Tracy. I got very emotional there with those kind words. I just heard that our chat is not allowing people to ask questions in the chat. We're not quite sure why, because on our side it's saying you should be able to, but there is a Q&A button down there, and that is allowing you to put your questions there. I see some of you have already put where you're from, and welcome everyone. So if you could just put your questions in that Q&A, and we'll make sure we get to those after we get to first. Just thinking about all the amazing puzzle pieces that had to fit together just to get this to publication. The biggest piece of the puzzle was actually getting the stories from our USAFA women. So everything you're about to hear exists because 108 women entrusted us with their stories. Now, our contributors, they're not just USAFA graduates, because some women were women who in process but did not get to graduate. But they still understood that they're a part of that USAFA sisterhood. When we put out the call for submissions, we asked all USAFA women to write about themselves. 108 women submitted, but many had multiple stories and poems that they included. Some even attended our workshops to help strengthen their writing. So what was inspiring is that many contributors had admitted that they had never shared some of their stories to anyone. Yet they gave their trust to us to use their words so that others could better understand the USAFA sisterhood. And in doing so, they allowed us to find the story within the stories. Their honesty and vulnerability gave us the opportunity to give a real account of the unbreakable sisterhood. So as a collective, the USAFA women writers knew that we had to be ever so careful with how we use those words because our contributors had been so courageous. And we cannot say it enough. Thank you. Thank you for being willing and open to being part of this collective achievement. Necessary Turbulence is all of ours because we needed each other to make it happen. And so now it's finally time to hear directly from the pages of Necessary Turbulence. And I'm going to start. So again, I'm Jennifer Ortiz, class of 99. Shit hot, sorry. If you know, you know. I selected this piece because it does show a bit of the tenacity a lot of us showed up with at the Academy. It's from chapter 2, Into the Crucible We March. Despite the tough standards, we survived. Katie Parker Dixon, 1988, confirmed, "We didn't do it alone," stating, "I developed an appreciation for teamwork, starting with the series of challenge courses in Jacks Valley, where through my squadron's diversity of skills, approaches, physical ability, creative thinking, and just sheer will, we accomplished challenge after challenge. Our survival came in small ways, words of encouragement, little victories, failure fueling anger, or minor rebellions whenever possible. We all found ways of motivating ourselves or other women basics to just keep going." Ortiz, 1999, says, "I looked down at the cast on my right arm thinking about my rotten luck. I had bruised the muscle between my thumb and index finger. It wasn't broken, so I could continue the final 2 weeks of Beast. But that meant during all the physical training, I'd be away from my flight in sickie flight, a group of individuals with doctor orders to limit physical activity. Cadre gave extra attention to basics in sickie flight, and I resolved then and there to stick with my flight no matter what until I was forced not to. I've learned that there's safety in numbers. None of the cadre seemed to notice me or my arm. The next hour went by in a blur. With the course over, I guzzled water at rest. Dirty didn't begin to describe my cast. I tried to fight the smile creeping onto my face. I hoped the cadre would think I'm just happy to have gotten another assault course off the books. But in that moment, I felt powerful. Not because I did well on the assault course. I got pulled out to remedial training on almost every obstacle. Apparently, to the upperclassmen, there was a pathetic quality to my physical ability, which screamed, "Train me harder." Yet in that moment, I knew that I had pulled a fast one on them. I disobeyed and got away with it. And for one small moment in that 6-week experience I was having, I got a small piece of control for myself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Torres. Can you see me? Okay, yeah. All right, class of 2009. I'm going to read a piece. I chose it because it speaks to our military members' initiative, resourcefulness, and ability to deal with unplanned situations so well, which everyone has been there, done that. And I also love at the end, there's a little bit of the story where you've all been in this situation. You're dealing with someone who is sticking with the rules and not really applying common sense. And it kind of, in the moment, you're just like, oh, I want to shake you. And then it becomes a story that you kind of like, oh, can you believe this happened to me? So you'll hear it. And it is edited for tonight for timing. You can read the full story when you buy your copy of the book. Difficult was our normal situation. Our first assignments tested everything we learned and trained for. Stationed at Clark Air Base in the Philippines in 1990, Denise Gellin, class of 1985, recalls the dire situation. On July 6, 1990, a strong earthquake prompted a group of scientists to visit Mount Pinatubo, a formerly dormant volcano 9 miles east of the base. The experts agreed an eruption was likely, but they didn't know when. You could tell how seriously the base personnel viewed our predicament when I was assigned to a committee planning a toga party. This perspective dramatically changed on June 7, 1991, when the first magmatic eruptions occurred, prompting the emergency evacuation of 15,000 personnel. After the timely and successful Operation Fiery Vigil, I was among 1,500 service members who stayed behind. From June 12th through June 14th, there were several waves of eruptions. With each of these, the klaxons would sound, and those of us on base would converge on the flight line and make our way to the alternate command post. During one such harrowing evacuation, I was stuck in a maelstrom of merging vehicles as we were frantically making our chaotic way across the base to safety on the other side of the runway. I thought to myself, I have survived the earthquake, typhoons, and terrorist threats, only to die in a head-on collision with another car. We began to feel the toll of the adrenaline spikes from repeated sirens sounding all hours of the day, spawning stressful emergency evacuations, followed by irregular attempts at rest. Finally, on June 15, 1991, Mount Pinatubo erupted in its most destructive fashion. Data later determined that this was the second largest terrestrial eruption of the 20th century, emitting ash over 100,000 feet in the air. The mountain became 1,000 feet shorter after releasing over 20 million tons of sulfur dioxide. On the day Mount Pinatubo erupted, the stay-behind group starkly discovered they were not at a safe distance from the volcano. They drove south towards Manila and stayed on the grounds of an agricultural college. Afraid of the college collapsing from the aftershocks, they slept in their cars. They stayed at the college for 3 days before making the perilous journey back to base. Gillen recalls, it was treacherous navigating the roads with downed power lines and other unique perils. I remember the windshield being scraped and scratched from the ashy remnants of porous volcanic rocks. To protect the engines, we covered the intake valves with nylon pantyhose. I recall the landscape looking like snow and fog. Gone were the green, lush tropical plants and the bright, beautiful blue sky. There were no trees standing, and you could not see the sun. We had gone from technicolor to gray and white. At the base, it looked like a snowstorm had hit. There was over a foot of ash covering the roads, parking lots, buildings, and homes. Many roofs had collapsed from the weight of the ash. There was no power, no water, and no food. A resourceful group found a pallet of potato sticks and Doritos in the commissary. That was our only food for days. I was part of a small contingent of women who made our way to a field with a pump. We had driven a blue government truck to this field and used the headlights to safely illuminate our path. After an eerie trek surrounded by flecks of ash still twinkling in the air, we were finally able to wash our hands and faces. I remained at Clark for 1 more week after the eruption. Many stayed longer. Passing through Guam on my way stateside, I remember a customs clerk asking someone in front of me if they had ash to declare, as all volcanic debris was not to be removed from the country. At this point, none of us had bathed since the eruption, leaving us fatigued, frustrated, and filthy. This person wordlessly bent over the counter, rustled their hair, and unleashed a deluge of gray ash onto the counter. The sound of pebbles hitting the tabletop was like raindrops hitting a glass window, filling the silence.
Thank you, Catherine. Can you hear me? Awesome. My name's Christine Traxler, class of 88, best to date. That was our little moniker. I don't know if there's any 88 folks out there. I can't see everyone. I'm on my phone on a road trip, so I'm very limited, but hopefully I'll come across just fine with the motel Wi-Fi here. I chose to, shout out to Teresa, my cousin from Kansas City. She's with us today, class of 93 at West Point. So, hi, T. So I chose a piece from Into the Crucible We March, chapter 2. I'm reading from the book. Oops, wait, can you see it? There we go. Directly from the book. So exciting to have the copy in my hand. This is a tough piece. It's a piece from a section that we explored the nature of sexual assault, unwanted sexual advances, rape at the Air Force Academy, and I chose to write a very visceral, detailed piece about an assault I experienced as a freshman. That wasn't necessarily the choice that most of our contributors went for, and I totally understand. The idea that it happened is very quick. It can happen very quick. You kind of wonder sometimes, did that just happen? And really, then you spend years integrating the trauma and dealing with it on a psychological, physical, emotional level. And so I attempted to capture it mainly as a way of capturing something that can happen so fast, but can have a huge, huge impact. And of course, this particular instance continued to have an impact because I had to work with the guy later in my first duty station. So there he was, and had to continue to deal with that one very, very quick experience. But okay, I will stop talking now and read directly from the piece. Sexual assault didn't happen to everyone, but many of us were assaulted or knew someone who experienced unwanted sexual advances, sexual assault, and rape. Just because we have no rape to report doesn't mean that many of us also didn't deal with sexual advances and assault attempts made more possible by the very power structure and rank hierarchy of the military. So I will start this story with a little context. It's Cy John Hall, about 10:30 at night in one of the hallways. And he's speaking to me. "Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about, T," he says. And then looking up and down the hallway, he rapidly pulls me into the dark activity room and shoves me up against a wall, his legs pinning mine and his left hand pushing my arms above my head. I am outside myself now, watching, frozen with fear. I smell something acrid, metallic, power. His face is touching mine, cheek to cheek, and he whispers, "You like it this way, don't you? They say you like it rough." And then his tongue is in my mouth, forcing it open, his slobber like a toddler. I almost think it's funny to feel this man baby slobbering all over me, the cliche porn lines he uses. But he moves too fast, and now his right hand is sliding under my short, dark blue issued athletic shorts, under my issue granny underwear. Now he's digging for a way inside me, and it hurts, and I come unfrozen enough to make a loud sound as he enters. His hand drops my arms to cover my mouth, and I am able to push him away hard, fast, and slip out of that dark room. In my room, safety, my heart is beating loudly. We have no lock on the door, so I stay there against the door for how long I do not know. But he does not attempt to enter, does not try to get inside again. The Air Force Academy, the same as the military in general, is against rape of any gender. Corrective measures, including adding a sexual assault prevention and response office with a visible presence around campus, but away from the dorms and administrative buildings. Today, flyers hang in many women's bathrooms around the cadet area, and trained professionals give presentations to the cadet wing about sexual harassment and assault. However, rape still happens to both sexes, and even one rape is one too many. Thank you. Eileen, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Christine. You and many other women had just displayed and gave us such a gift of your courage and your vulnerability to share those kinds of stories with us. And for those that are wondering,
And we've had this question of, did we really tell the true stories and some of those kind of ugly times? And we included that today so that, yes, they're in there. It was not at all the totality of our collective experience or even individually, but it is very much truth. I think I introduced myself earlier, but Eileen Isla from the class of 1985, Best Alive. And I chose a piece for today that encompasses parenting, some thoughts from one of our LGBTQ contributors, and faith. All three of those are important through lines of the totality within the totality of our story. And there's a section of the book, as I was considering what did I want to select, that brought all of those out in this one beautiful piece. And there was just an incredible moment of coming across it and knowing that this had to be for today. We chose full-time parenting. We chose part-time careers. We chose live-in help. We chose full-time careers alongside family. Sometimes we chose all of the above. Those of us who parented in any form answered calls from school nurses between classified meetings and used leave days, not for rest, but for elder care or catching up on exhaustion. At work, we showed up composed and prepared. Off stage, we relied on duct tape, caffeine, and whatever momentary breathing space we could find. When questions surfaced, we found ourselves explaining to peers, supervisors, or commanders that motherhood had not erased our ambition. For those of us who didn't parent, there was an equal barrage of judgment, spoken and unspoken, embedded in cultural stigma, as if we lacked in some way because of our devotion to our career over a more culturally traditional woman's path. That judgment could even come from parents and family members, as Tricia Heller, the class of 1987, shared. When my mom and dad found out during one of their visits about Regina and I being a couple, it did not go well at all. I ended up sending my parents home. When I said goodbye to my mother at the airport, I told her, I know you're upset with me. That's fine. But I hope that you actually understand that I am exactly the person that you raised me to be, spiritually, emotionally, lovingly. And I am at peace with myself because I believe wholeheartedly that I will go before God and with my heart and my soul and my brain in my hands, hand it to him and say, you know what, God? I think I did the best I could with what you gave me. No matter which way we turned, life pulled us. We faced the expectation that we could do it all and make it look easy. Colleen McBratney, class of 1996, learned how resilience actually manifested in her life. Sometimes those skills we learned to be resilient weren't always the most healthy skills. I think the biggest part of that challenge was setting my own priorities and my own expectations and learning to be confident enough to do that, to meet my own expectations and not those of my mentors or my peers. That was important. I didn't need to make those comparisons, and I fell into the imposter syndrome mindset more often than I needed to. That was self-imposed sometimes, thinking that I didn't have credibility within my career field. Whether we chose childbirth, adoption, surrogacy, or step parenting, all who parented lived multidimensional lives, trying to move quietly between worlds with the ease of a science fiction cloaking device. Our most difficult coordination wasn't between work and home, full-time or part-time or stay-at-home, parenting or not. The toughest moments were in the constant pull between what people expected of us and what we expected of ourselves. Yet we survived inside our system without breaking trustworthiness with ourselves, with our colleagues, or with the institution we served.
Thank you, Irene. Hi, I'm Michelle Roll from the class of 2003, Strong and Mighty, or better known as Bong class. I'll be reading from chapter 3, Unforgiving Execution. In July 2021, as the U.S. began withdrawing from Afghanistan, the Taliban had been working its way across the country, undoing the last 2 decades of reconstruction. As the situation in Afghanistan rapidly deteriorated, the Taliban approached Kabul. At the still operating international airport, tens of thousands of people begged for transportation, climbing on top of commercial airliners and attempting to cling to departing U.S. aircraft,
only to fall to their deaths. A call to the Air Force Reserve went out. Stephanie Soltis, class of 2001, a C-17 pilot and pilot for Delta, answered the call to help. I'd flown non-combatant evacuation operations, or NEOs, before. I'd done high-intensity tactical flying before. I'd been to Kabul, and I was one of only a few aircraft commanders in our unit for whom all of that was true. But I'd never done all three at once, surrounded by heavily armed enemy combatants, and I knew that realistically, no one had done anything like this since Saigon. We flew our asses off for 2 weeks before people above our pay grade made the decision to end the operation on August 30th in the worst conditions. Afghanistan and the Persian Gulf in August, with all the heat and humidity and aircraft performance limitations that entailed, cramming 350 hungry, frightened people on a plane with one lavatory for 6 hours. Army officers browbeating enlisted crew members to load decrepit helicopters instead of more refugees. Fellow Americans who wanted us to make room for chewing tobacco and energy drinks instead of more humans. Taking off with no flight plan, diversions, nowhere to land, building our own approaches, holding stacks and deconflictions on the fly, using techniques dating to the Berlin airlift. Spotting enemy fighters aiming heavy weaponry at us on short final, hoping the tenuous agreement between the Taliban and CENTCOM was enough to keep hopped up 20-year-olds who knew they just defeated the United States from pulling their triggers. Taxiing past both them and teeming masses of civilians right outside the fence, knowing the future was condemning every soul that we couldn't get on board. Senior Air Force officers threatening to court-martial crews who let passengers onto the tarmac to relieve themselves after 7 hours. Being ordered to abort on our way to take 30 medics in after a bombing, overwhelmed garbage and sewage systems at receiving bases. We barely slept, and most of us were also involved in digital Dunkirk, trying to connect people we'd never met in hopes of getting just one more person through the gate. We spent thousands of our own dollars on diapers and food for the refugees. The Air Force and politicians want us to focus on the fact that we evacuated 124,000 people in 2 weeks, and that's true. And we should be proud that this country produces the kind of men and women who drop everything and fly into danger for people they've never met on the other side of the world. Thousands of ordinary Americans pushed themselves beyond their limits and did the extraordinary. We should be grateful to everyone who was clear-eyed about the stakes and the allies and the Americans and civilians and gave everything they could. But it won't change the fact that we abandoned people whose only fault was believing in our promises. It won't change the fact that, but for better preparation by support agencies and less organizational infighting by petty bureaucrats, we could have gotten more out. I believe flying the evacuation of Kabul was the reason I was put on this earth. It's hard to imagine anything I did before or since, and I believe USAFA helped me become the kind of leader who could put my crew in a position to pull that off. But the tens of thousands we left behind to face torture, starvation, and death at the hands of the Taliban, I'll be haunted for the rest of my life. The refugees, though, they give me hope for America's future. Over half were women and children. Most of them spoke English. It was clear our allies and Afghanistan's educated middle class were doing whatever they could to escape and make a better life for their children. They were polite and grateful, and they only wanted to know, pardon me, but do you know to where the aircraft is flying? Not a preposition out of place. I think of them as the Grey Poupon girls. Their English was perfect. After landing with one load, I spotted a sandy-haired little boy about 4 years old with light brown eyes. He had Down syndrome, but was a happy boy, doted on by his parents and older sisters. He smiled at me when I came down the cockpit ladder. I was thankful I hadn't seen him before we landed. I would have been reduced to a blubbering mess. The operation was such a disorganized shit show that sometimes the only thing I feel good about is that whoever he is, he and his sisters, the Grey Poupon girls, will live longer and better life in the U.S. than they ever could in Afghanistan.
Thank you, Michelle. What a powerful piece. I'm Maxie Jane Frazier, and I chose the piece I will be reading because it imagines the highs and lows across all of our lives and ends on a positive note. So I'll lead you into that from what Michelle just read. Now we are the women others look to, not just because of our titles, but because of our presence, our perspective, our lived truth. Power and inspiration come from authenticity and vulnerability, our achievements and our resilience. We pass the torch not to step aside, but to light more fires. We gather what is crystallized over 50 years, no matter where we are in our lives, age, position, rank, geography. Our job now is continuity and expansion, keeping the best of what we learned and widening it as more of us are just beginning this journey. Telling truth to power and insisting on design that reduces harm and a culture that understands individuality is the force multiplier. We do this work with humility because we remember what it felt like to be studied, doubted, and to step forward anyway. We bear this legacy on our shoulders, hung on our walls, sewn onto our uniforms, and carried in our backpacks, our helmet bags, and our purses. Our inheritance is not a weight, but it is a charge, a quiet insistence and expectation that we lend our backs, extend our hands, share our wisdom, and be the unyielding wind that keeps the doors open for women to follow. And this is the interstitial piece before Carry On, and it's called You Laugh. When you're 20, you laugh and laugh for the possible lover surrounding you as if you're gold at the end of a rainbow, for the slurred compliments and bestial breath. From the corner booth, chins dipped, you offer the look, the lashes. You dash from your perch long enough to sashay all suggestion to the electric slide, asses and boobs curved and tight, push against your miniskirt and buttons. You are certain you will be the one to win as you laugh and laugh and laugh. When you're 30, you wait for the new job. You wait at the altar. You wait at the frying pan where you hear them laughing from the other room. You wait for soccer and carpool and the promotion that went to the guy who wasn't on maternity leave. You nod and agree with them. You cut ahead of the one who is on maternity leave now. Sometimes you laugh, but only alone in the bathroom mirror when it usually turns into tears. When you're 40, you meet in cafes holding triple shot oat milk, no whip, deep scented lifelines. You meet the breakup, you meet the therapist, you meet the diagnosis, and you meet each other's eyes. Your quiet laughter is ironic, small, unobtrusive under acoustic Ed Sheeran's Eyes Closed. You meet every new tragedy while holding your breath. Will the next one be yours? When you're 50, you arrange your future, take the call from your ex's new wife, lead the meetings, and promote the mothers. Later, you order Thai green curry, the one they always hated, and prop your feet on the ottoman, sipping your paired wine. You read the book. Hell, you write the book. You've forgotten about tears and looking in the bathroom mirror. When you're 60, you hike the hike. You hand off your role to the mothers and the others. You take your own mother to medical appointments. You hold her hands. You hold each other's hands. Your laughter is soft in the moment, loud in the other moment, always available as the antidote to snaking chemotherapy lines, their forgotten names, and the young futures pushing their asses, their boobs, and their lives into the place you once stood. You celebrate them. You step aside. You join them. You recognize universal themes in their embrace. When you're 70, you walk the walk. For the version of yourself looking through flirtatious lashes, for the dinners, the carpool, the promotions, for the wine, the Thai green curry, the exes, for ambition, for chemo and memory care, for your band of sisters, for their futures. You've forgotten about tears and looking in the bathroom mirror and withering mothers. Maybe you're forgetting even more. You laugh and laugh and laugh.
All right, and so those readings represent only a small glimpse of the extraordinary voices you're going to encounter throughout the book, and we're eager for you to read the book and share your thoughts with us. So now we're going to share a few thoughts with you. Recently, Tracy, our wonderful publisher, who has always squeezed us in whenever she could. I think today you also squeezed us in between meetings too. So we understand if you do end up having to go a little bit early. But Tracy said that she never doubted for a moment that we would get this book done. And I had to admit that I doubted a few times as the timelines got tighter and schedulings got busier and the magnitude of what we were doing actually would hit me. But I was always astonished at how we were able to work together and support one another throughout the process. So Christine, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to put you on the spot. What was your biggest surprise during the project?
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, that we finished it. That was big. But really, it was about, I think, how inspirational this piece ended up being. I'm all about. I'm not negative necessarily, but I'm very much I critique. Like, I critique systems. Like, when I first started writing for this, I immediately went into a rant about Pete Hegseth, right? And which, was basically like, okay, no, we're not, that's not what we're doing here. But it was great. It was great to get all that out and then to sort of move the theme to really what we have accomplished and the ways in which we moved into spaces that were never built for us. And it became a way of doing exactly kind of what I wanted to do, but in I think a much more universal, much more inspirational way. And that just really surprised me. There we go.
I will say one of our editors who's not able to actually be she's here, but she's not able to actually communicate right now. She actually also said that she had thought that it was going to be something different. And then when she read it, she was like, oh no, it did say everything I wanted it to say. It just said it in a different way. So that was cool. All right. What about you, Dawn? What was the biggest surprise during the project?
Good afternoon, everybody. I don't know if it was necessarily a surprise, but it was reassuring that over the 5 decades, as we as women trying to raise a family, trying to climb the corporate ladder and the military ladder as well, trying to make sense of our life, that we all have a lot of the same challenges, no matter where, whether we finished the academy, whether we only spent 5 years active duty or 30. We have people that spend 30 years active duty. We have those challenges. And now one thing that was, for me, was just super fantastic to hear was that we're now leaning on other women. Women are taking care of women. And I will tell you that wasn't my experience. I can only talk to my experience. But I loved hearing those stories. And then the third thing that I think we still need to work on a little bit, a lot of the women I speak with daily tell me I really didn't do anything. And that concerns me, that women today do not understand the value of what they have done to move us forward, to move this country forward. And so those are 3 things that I took away, and I will continue to work on after this project. I just loved watching the way this team worked together. And I think there are a lot of people that didn't believe it was going to happen, but I had faith. I had faith.
Ooh, sorry. Sorry. Yes, I agree with you, Dawn. And I will say that I think the 50th celebration showed that sisterhood as well with all USAFA women. So that was wonderful. All right. One of our reviewers, Bob Chikosis, used the phrase narrative carpet bombing to describe how we use the excerpts in this book. What else may readers find in the book that's unexpected? Michelle?
I really think I think a lot of people think that the book was going to be about just being at the academy, and even my own friends and family keep going, oh, it's an academy book. And I think as readers, the beginning shows how difficult it was to perhaps get in, but this narrative arc about how we're telling stories after the academy, we're talking about 9/11, we're talking about Afghanistan, we're talking about having kids and retirements. And then honestly, there's a chapter at the end where we try to give homage to the sisters that we've lost. And honestly, I wish we could have had a whole entire book on just that piece. And hopefully we'll be able to honor them more. But I think readers are going to go, wow, I really see a piece of myself in this, even if they didn't attend USAFA, or even if it's my 9-year-old daughter, she's able to envision a whole lifetime that comes after being at USAFA. So I think the surprise is just going to be that it's a narrative arc that spans 50 years. It's a lifetime.
Yeah, that's so true. And thinking about that next generation that's coming up and how you're right, it's applicable. Real quick, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. We will be answering a few of those in just a few moments. But Catherine, what else may readers find in the book that is unexpected?
I think when you look at the book at face value, you think as a reader, oh, it's about USAFA, or oh, it's about women. And, I didn't go to USAFA. I wasn't in the military. I'm not a woman. So this book isn't for me. But I think to piggyback what Michelle said, like this narrative arc, it just touches human condition. I mean, everyone has felt imposter syndrome at some point. Everyone has felt, hey, my boss is annoying and dumb and I do a better job than him, or her. Everyone has felt, oh, this is going to be hard, or I can't figure this out. So like there are stories in there that are applicable for all readers. And I think that's going to be a surprising element. And I also think there are stories in there that are just jaw-dropping and incredible that I have served and I didn't know some things that had happened, or even hearing if two people were in the same situation, maybe they didn't discuss it afterwards, but they ended up feeling the same thing. And that shared humanity, I think, is what just ties everything together and what makes this such a wonderful book.
Okay, yes, you're right. And then one of our contributors, when she read it, wrote us and literally said it was kind of interesting to hear her feelings being described by other women, and she'd like, I thought I was the only one. Oh, definitely. All right, one more, and then we're going to do the QA real quick. For me, this project has connected me to an amazing group of women who I value so much. And it's also made me remember that my service continues to this day, even if I don't wear the uniform. And I think that is something as you kind of move away from the military world, you forget sometimes that you're still doing. But what has this journey meant to you personally, Eileen?
This is where the Kevlar carnation is regrouping for a second with that question. It is really kind of hard to put it all into a succinct answer. The overwhelming feelings of I had no earthly idea, and fill in the blank. I had no earthly idea we all felt so much the same over 50 years. I had no earthly idea. I want to say I did have. I've always known how incredibly smart and brilliant and agile and quick and funny and that this group of women are, just from, I'll say, kind of the limited exposure just to like a small group of my classmates that I stayed connected with. But in the breadth and depth of these stories that came in, that was just overwhelming. And the biggest thing that was how it changed me. I didn't expect that. I thought this was a project, right? I'm a project manager. We're going to write a book. We're herding a lot of cats here. We got hundreds of thousands of words. We're doing something I certainly have never done before. And the only person on the team that has is Max. And we're going to just, because we're smart women, we're going to figure it out. And I didn't, because I was so much left brain, I didn't expect how much it would change me as a human being, as a person. That's my big takeaway. Moving forward in this incredibly new wholeheartedness way, with a truly integrated life, of the pieces of me that were so fragmented, coming through a system that denied whole huge pieces of me personally, and for 24 years, and then the segmenting, which we all do as women. We're shapeshifters. We present whichever we think is going to be the approved version of ourselves in whatever circumstance. And I've come out of this with, that dog don't hunt anymore. I am moving forward in life because of you all, even the ones I can't see on the screen, but you're out there, and I know you're out there. That it has changed me so much and made my life complete.
Oh, that is lovely. That is very true, Eileen. I think we all feel that. And now, Max, same question. What has this journey meant to you personally?
You want me to follow that? It has been an incredible journey. I had the great honor in my career to work along with Michelle in the Department of English and Fine Arts. And I think she would say the same thing, where our academy time, especially, I can't remember, I spent like 11 or 13 or a lot of years off and on in the department. And it changed my relationship to the academy. It became the place that I was a teacher more than the place that I'd been a cadet. And I found myself losing touch with that cadet time happily. Like, I figured that I was some sort of just wilting flower, who just made it through somehow. And I struggled against participating in this book or not. And when I finally fully committed, it's been the most worthwhile thing I've done beyond going to the academy itself. I discovered that everybody had so many similar experiences, that the fears I had, other women had, that really, if we talked to each other more and learned about each other's feelings and experiences, we could be powerful. And that's why I believe so strongly in this sisterhood that we're creating with the book. My roommates have been the most incredible people on earth. They're so supportive and helping with the book and helping with everything. And they were my small sisterhood, and now I have a huge sisterhood, and I truly believe that after working on this book. And with that ending of the answer, I think we're moving on to the Q&A for our people in the Zoom. And if you're on the YouTube live channel, we're watching that chat as well. And we're answering any questions you have. Do you have questions about the book, the writing process, about the contributors, the historical significance? And I know we've already had one question that was asking about the title. So maybe we'll just kick off with that. And we'll ask Eileen to answer the question for the title, because she came up with this brilliant title.
It was one of many, as we all know, that got kicked around and put forward. And, when you go back and you look at our archives, some of the first outreach materials we produced and those early working titles that we would put out in material and shop and stuff like that. So, and then when Necessary Turbulence, when you go back and look at the original outreach video, and we actually talk about, we didn't actually use the word turbulence, we decided, but there were other things that we said in that video, that there was a number of things that suddenly, it was one of these Oprah aha moments that came together one day. And there's two important, I want to say, reasons and messages that come out of this title, and why we all just fell in love with it, and we think it could not be more perfect. Of course, we think that, right? Because all of us, both the women in the book, and because we wrote this again in a single collective voice, so we are writing for all 12,000 plus of women that have entered the academy. And all of us had to navigate and calibrate and adapt and change and find our way in, not just in the military, but throughout our lives, in spaces and systems, in places that never imagined us, weren't designed for us. And we did it without templates, and we did it without precedents, and we did it many times with little to no margin for error. And through all of that, all of us individually have found, because of all of that turbulence, growth occurred for all of us. And that growth obviously hasn't ended, as you just heard me talk about, just for me. And it's that turbulence. And of course, we're all Air Force and now Space Force, but there is turbulence in space, just in some slightly different forms. That is a great term, and it also comes from our collective provenance and our lineage. And it's that necessary turbulence that enables all of us individually to change and to grow. And then as we thought about it further, it was all of us bringing ourselves to this institution, that had never imagined us, that did its best, I would say, to prepare for us, and still missed a lot of things and did not address the cultural realities and hadn't thought through those. And there are certainly still some vestiges of that at the Academy now. But because we all went, those that marched up that ramp under the words, "Bring me men," shining above it, and everyone after that walked up that same ramp with the Air Force core values of integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do shining above us. We all brought to that institution our own type of turbulence, and our institution had to make decisions how it was going to adapt and change and grow, or not. But we bet turbulence makes institutions also have to do those things, adapt and change and grow. So individually, and the institutions, and whether it's the Air Force Academy or any other organization or institution that any of us are a part of, that's what the title Necessary Turbulence speaks to for us.
Okay, we have a couple more questions. I'd like to ask Catherine this first one, or second one, I guess. What story affected you the most, other than, of course, the one that you've written?
Oh, that's a good one. All right. I would say, you're putting me on the spot. They were all so beautiful. We received one, I think, from a mortuary officer, and I didn't even know that was a job. And she just told the story so beautifully and wove how she had to go do her job, which is, a very solemn and serious role. And at the same time, she's balancing picking up her children, and she had promised them a snow day, but now, hold on, I'm sorry, we have to go do this. And she can't talk about her job to her kids. And I just thought, like, wow, to be able to just compartmentalize like that in reality, in the present moment, and to kind of just crush down your emotions. Like, yes, thank you, Michelle. Katie Witt's story, thanks. I just thought it was so beautifully written, and it just tells of how an experience that so many women do go through, maybe not to that extent, but I was blown away with that one. That one was a great story.
I think it's important to note that one of our goals here was not just to write about USAPA women. I know Eileen and Max talked about that at the beginning, and Jen also emphasized that. This was to talk about women and just life in general. So I think that theme was one that we really, really tried to emphasize throughout the book, throughout the decades. One of the questions we have here is from Colleen. And she would like to know, what would you tell a woman who is interested in going to the academy? Christine, let me hand that to you.
Wow. Okay. So I do get students every once in a while, I'm a high school teacher, who are very interested in going. Usually they want to fly. I'm absolutely encouraging. And even though I did not continue to pursue a military career, as we all know, the academy experience is, it's just life-changing. And I think because of this book, and when we all got together in Colorado Springs for our one retreat that we all got together, we really talked about this big theme of, we didn't call it at that time turbulence, as Eileen talked about with the title, but we talked about it as how women change systems, how when we enter an institution and we don't give up, we just continue showing up who we are, the way we operate, the way we lead, the way we choose to change the way things are done just by virtue of our will, by just doing it. It shifts these environments in ways that talking about them theoretically by pursuing change via policy cannot do, right? Women who are literally entering institutions and changing them directly is so, so powerful. And it's not like that I'm putting that onto high school students who want to go to the Air Force Academy. I'm not saying, yes, please go and change the institution for the better. That's not necessarily what I'm telling them per se. I am, of course, giving them more of a realistic view of what how much work is needed and what they are up against in still what is still a man's world. And for the most part, in terms of just the way it's built, but that they can do whatever they want to do. They are capable. They are powerful, and they have a whole history now of women who have done it. And so that's what I like to tell them typically.
Thank you, Christine. And I wanted to also thank Tracy and Dr. Landak as well. We really appreciate you being here with us. This is a big, big day for us. And you've been an important part of this group. And since we're getting very, very close to the end, Eileen, I'm going to hand it over to you to close us out.
Thanks, Dawn. Thanks for the questions and the phenomenal discussion and the answers to all of them. It was, for me personally, especially, it was just really wonderful to hear, as always, from this incredible team, which we call the writing team. And as we bring our time together to a close, I'm going to start with recognizing some of these people that made today and this book possible. And I will start with these incredible women arrayed before me and before you. Thank you each for believing in this project, for bringing your extraordinary talents to it. This book carries your hearts, your energy, your souls, your love, and your fingerprints on every page. To Dr. Kate Landak, again, thank you for recognizing the historical importance of this work and for writing a foreword, an incredible foreword that places these women's experiences within the broader story of our nation. To Tracy and the incredible Millspeak Foundation, this phenomenal nonprofit organization that brings veterans' voices to the world, and we need more of them, all of you out there. We need you too. Thank you for believing in us, in our story, and that it deserved to be published and shared with the world. To our families, friends, supporters who encouraged us, donated to us, made time for us, and loved us along the way, thank you for walking this journey with us. And finally, to the 108 women whose voices fill these pages, thank you for trusting us with your vulnerability, your authenticity, your brilliance, your hilarity, your grief, your persistent resilience, your stories. Some of you wrote about moments you had never shared before. Some revisited memories you hadn't thought about in decades. Some discovered through this journey that experiences and thoughts and feelings you once believed belonged only to you were actually shared by multitudes of women and are a part of a much larger story that transcends decades. Some of you healed, and we are so grateful for that, and that you now move forward with whole hearts and integrated lives. Your courage made this book possible. Your voices are its heart. For 50 years, this story, our story, has existed in individual conversations, individual memories, journals, photographs, class reunions, and lives quietly lived. Today, it begins a new chapter. Today, it belongs to every reader who is willing to discover it. Our hope is that readers will turn the final page of the book with a deeper understanding, not only of the women who entered the Air Force Academy and women's service to our country, but of what courage, perseverance, friendship, leadership, and service looks like across an entire lifetime. If today has inspired you, I have 3 simple invitations. First, as you read the book, take time to dwell along the way. Second, after you've read it, please leave a review. Go on Goodreads or Amazon or Barnes & Noble or anywhere else that books are sold. Reviews help other readers discover books they might otherwise never find. And finally, if this story moves you, share it. Tell a friend and a colleague, recommend it to your book club, your One Book, One Town community read, your employee group, your college or university, your veteran organization. Give it as a gift, especially to women, daughters, nieces, and granddaughters, so they will know that all doors everywhere are open to them, including the ones they didn't even know were there. Stories endure and change lives because people choose to pass them forward. Thank you all here on Zoom in the webinar and that have been following on YouTube and who will see this and read it and hear it afterwards. Thank you for spending this afternoon with us. Thank you for celebrating this remarkable historic milestone. Thank you for helping Necessary Turbulence begin its journey into the world. Have a wonderful 4th of July as we celebrate 250 years of America, because we are America. Good afternoon, everyone.
Recorded